In the middle of California's desert, there's a military zone larger than Los Angeles. No public maps, no press access, and no confirmation of what's being built there. But defense insiders have a name for it: the Empire's sandbox. Here is where tomorrow's wars are quietly rehearsed, and no one is watching. It's not a base in the traditional sense. There are no barracks full of soldiers, no sprawling airfields packed with jets. What exists here is far more calculated, a war development zone built for one purpose: to invent and refine the tools of domination. Missiles, drones, hypersonic prototypes, classified propulsion systems, targeting algorithms. The components of future warfare are born in this wasteland, funded not by open debate in Congress, but by discrete budget lines buried in trillion-dollar defense bills. And the companies involved aren't in uniform. They wear suits, carry security clearances, and represent corporations with more lobbying power than most governments. But why does no one talk about it? Because this is where the military-industrial machine operates without friction. No press, no oversight, no accountability. Just research, weaponization, and deployment, often before the public even knows there's a war. In a world racing towards autonomous warfare and geopolitical fracture, China Lake isn't just a location. It's a model, a vision of what military power looks like when it's outsourced, automated, and shielded from view. And as we step inside this hidden empire, one question becomes clear. How much of today's peace is built on tomorrow's war, quietly tested in the desert? Welcome to Empire Secrets. Seen from the outside, it doesn't look like much. Drive north out of Los Angeles and you'll pass endless miles of scrub, sand, and silence. No road signs, no cities, just heat waves and dust devils. But deep inside this scorched nowhere, on the edge of Ridgecrest, California, sits something enormous, a restricted zone that stretches more than 1.1 million acres, larger than the state of Rhode Island. The official name? Naval Air Weapons Station China Lake. The public knows almost nothing about it. No one talks about it on the news, no mainstream documentaries. Even Google Maps is careful with the borders. But within defense circles, China Lake is legendary, because what happens here has shaped nearly every modern war America has fought. It began as a World War II test site in 1943. While other bases were shut down or downsized after the war ended, China Lake only grew. It became the proving ground for experimental missiles, cutting-edge warheads, radar-jamming tech, and classified prototypes. Its isolation wasn't a flaw, it was the point. The desert became a firewall between public knowledge and private warfare. Today, that firewall is thicker than ever. No civilian flights are allowed over the airspace. Photography is banned near the perimeter, and thousands of square miles are marked "no access, explosive testing in progress." Even earthquakes in the region have triggered lockdowns because of the unknown stockpiles buried beneath the soil. But the most strategic disguise is not its secrecy, it's the name. China Lake sounds like a suburb, a national park, maybe even a water reservoir. It evokes calm, nature, even diplomacy. In reality, there is no lake, there is no peace. This is where weapons are born, long before they make headlines. Inside, a network of labs, hangars, underground bunkers, and classified testing zones work around the clock. Many are run not by the Navy, but by defense corporations with unrestricted access. The deeper you go, the less military uniform you see, and the more corporate badges show up. This is not a traditional base. It's a contractor fortress. And that's not an accident. It's a blueprint. Because modern warfare isn't just national, it's commercial, and China Lake is the desert where that alliance was perfected. And the question is, if this much land can be hidden from the public, how much power has already been transferred out of view? To understand the power of China Lake, you have to stop looking at it as a military base and start seeing it as a financial ecosystem. Because what makes China Lake dangerous isn't just the technology, it's the way it's funded. Almost no one outside the defense world understands how the money works, and that's by design. The US defense budget is a staggering $886 billion, but not all of that money is public. Within the Pentagon's accounts, there are funding streams known as black budgets, unlisted, undisclosed, and often buried within other departments. China Lake thrives on those budgets. In official documents, the funding often appears under vague categories: advanced systems testing, tactical development, or classified readiness initiatives. What those terms mean in practice? Hypersonic missile trials, directed energy weapon calibration, and field testing of next-gen drone fleets long before Congress even debates their use. But here's the real kicker. Much of this money doesn't stay in the hands of the Navy. It passes almost immediately to private contractors. Companies like Raytheon, Lockheed Martin, Boeing, Northrop Grumman. They don't wait for the open bids. At China Lake, they operate under existing umbrella agreements, multi-year, multi-billion-dollar contracts that allow them to develop whatever the Pentagon needs, without needing to disclose the details. This is what makes China Lake so potent. It's not just a base, it's a corporate testing campus. The US military provides the land, the legal shield, and the airspace, but the R&D, the software, the engineering, that belongs to companies whose loyalty lies not with transparency, but with quarterly earnings and defense stock performance. In 2023 alone, over $20 billion in weapons testing and aerospace development was routed through indirect contracts tied to China Lake's Logistics and Programs Office. That figure isn't public, but defense analysts tracking procurement metadata have traced portions of hypersonic trials, loitering drone systems, and AI targeting models back to this one facility. And because much of it is classified, there's no audit trail, no public breakdown of spending, no civilian oversight, just billions disappearing into the sand. This is the business model of 21st century war. Privatize the research, seal the budgets, export the consequences. And it's why China Lake isn't just a base, it's a bank, a financial instrument for converting secrecy into profit, and what it funds next is even more disturbing. What makes it so terrifying isn't just its secrecy, it's the technology being born there, years before it reaches the battlefield and decades before the public hears a word. This isn't just a testing ground for existing weapons, it's a creation zone, a forge for the next generation of warfare. Take the hypersonic glide vehicle, a missile that flies over 5 times the speed of sound and can change direction mid-flight. In theory, no modern defense system can stop it. In 2022, public military briefings mentioned test activity in remote western regions, but satellite analysts identified unusual launch patterns inside China Lake's restricted sectors, matching the exact characteristics of hypersonic trials. Then there's directed energy weapons, lasers capable of disabling aircraft, satellites, or communication systems at the speed of light. The Pentagon has admitted to progress, but the power sources needed for real-time field use remain classified. China Lake is one of only 3 facilities with enough distance, airspace, and sensor coverage to conduct these tests safely. But the most unsettling development isn't in missiles or lasers. It's in autonomy. Inside China Lake, prototypes are being built that remove the human from the equation. AI targeting systems, drone swarm coordination platforms, and predictive threat modules are not just being tested, they're being refined in closed-loop simulations that mimic real-world urban, desert, and naval scenarios. Imagine an unmanned aerial vehicle identifying a target, consulting no human operator, launching a strike, and logging the engagement as a successful action, all within 5 seconds. That's no longer science fiction. That's being beta tested in the desert. And these aren't isolated systems. They're integrated, linked into a broader architecture known as mosaic warfare, a concept where autonomous units, satellites, sensors, and command software interlock into a constantly adapting, self-repairing network of offense. And China Lake is one of the few zones where such complexity can be tested without international oversight. But why here? Because China Lake offers the one thing every military contractor wants: freedom. No civilian infrastructure to avoid, no population centers to protect, no camera lenses to dodge. It's a blank slate for war. A zone where algorithms decide intent, robots test lethality, and weapons are judged not by morality, but by efficiency. And when those weapons leave the desert, they don't go to display cases, they go to active war zones. The pipeline is disturbingly short. A system tested here in early 2023 was later spotted in footage from the Middle East, guiding drone formations over urban areas. That same year, a target identification algorithm trained in simulated China Lake towns was deployed for reconnaissance missions in Africa. This isn't military preparation, it's military rehearsal, and the stage is almost set. Because what's being built in the sand today isn't just hardware, it's a future where war becomes a product, sold, tested, and upgraded like software. For years, China Lake operated beneath the surface, out of sight, out of question. But in July 2019, nature cracked open the illusion. A powerful 7.1 magnitude earthquake struck Southern California, its epicenter directly beneath Naval Air Weapons Station China Lake. Within hours, the Navy declared the base not mission capable. Personnel were evacuated, roads were sealed, and for the first time in decades, whispers escaped the fence line. Because the damage wasn't just structural, it was strategic. Satellite imagery taken days later showed scorched sections of test fields, collapsed hangar roofs, and scorched debris trails extending from launch areas. One image leaked through an aerospace forum showed what appeared to be an underground facility vent shaft blown open from the inside. But that's not what alarmed insiders. It was what the earthquake revealed about what China Lake was hiding. Independent analysts flagged the incident for triggering containment protocol anomalies, meaning sensitive materials, likely munitions or fuel sources, had been compromised. Locals reported blacked-out convoys moving in and out of Ridgecrest for days, unmarked, untraced. Civilian contractors were quietly relocated, and several employees posted online that their security clearance was suspended pending review. The Navy gave minimal updates, no list of damaged systems, no confirmation of what was inside the sealed zones. Only one clue: a $2.3 billion emergency request filed with Congress later that year, marked for structural restoration and classified systems mitigation. No breakdowns, no oversights. The truth: the earthquake temporarily tore the veil. It showed just how fragile the secrecy was and how much had been buried, physically and financially, beneath the desert floor. If a single natural event could render a million-acre facility inoperable, the implications were massive, not just for the US military preparedness, but for the entire global web of private contractors who use China Lake as their R&D lab. Because in the aftermath, companies didn't pull back. They expanded. In 2020, Lockheed signed a renewed agreement for autonomous vehicle testing at the site. Raytheon upgraded its warhead containment silos, and the Air Force, despite the base being Navy-controlled, sent engineers for a joint cyber weapon integration trial. Why? Because the earthquake didn't stop the Empire. It reminded them why the Empire needs to stay hidden. In a world of fragile alliances, unpredictable adversaries, and shifting terrain, China Lake remains the one place where weapons development doesn't pause, doesn't answer questions, and doesn't wait for permission. The quake cracked the surface, but the machine underneath didn't blink. Most countries test weapons in response to conflict. At China Lake, the US prepares for wars that haven't happened yet. This isn't speculation, it's doctrine. China Lake has become the sandbox of strategy, where the military and its contractors simulate entire war zones in advance. Urban drone strikes, naval swarms, electronic warfare blackouts, even full-scale assaults on fictional targets modeled after real-world cities. And the goal isn't defense, it's dominance through foresight. Within the fenced-off perimeter lie dozens of mock installations, replicas of foreign communication towers, enemy radar systems, even scaled-down buildings mimicking Middle Eastern and East Asian infrastructure. Using AI and predictive modeling, US military planners create battle scenarios projected to unfold 5, 10, even 20 years from now. China Lake is where those scenarios get tested. One leaked defense document from 2021 outlined a program codenamed Quiet Spear, a coordinated drone and satellite strike sequence designed for first strike neutralization of high-priority radar fields in contested maritime zones. The report didn't name the location, but analysts traced the terrain described to a simulated island chain inside China Lake. It mirrored the layout of Taiwan's eastern defense perimeter. Another project, known as Black Salt, focused on cyber-physical warfare, disabling communication towers and surveillance systems across desert terrain. Again, no country was named, but the tower layouts matched installations in Iran's central provinces. This is how future wars are scripted. China Lake provides the physical canvas, contractors supply the tools, the Pentagon supplies the intent, and the public sees nothing until it's real. Even recent conflicts have been foreshadowed in this sandbox. The loitering drone tactics now used in Ukraine trialed at China Lake in simulated Eastern European terrain in 2017. The synchronized airstrike methods used in Libya and Syria calibrated here by private firms years before public intervention. The laser communication relays now linking US and Australian forces in the Pacific, tested over desert ridges designed to mimic the South China Sea's island clusters. This is not training, this is staging, and it's changing the very nature of war. Because when conflicts are pre-scripted, when outcomes are gamed before they unfold, the war is no longer a reaction. It becomes a product, a rollout, a launch sequence of software, steel, and shockwaves. And China Lake is where that rollout begins. Here, adversaries are modeled like market competitors. Territory becomes code, and warfare becomes less about defense and more about forecasting geopolitical profit. The desert is silent, but inside, simulations are already running. And in some cases, they're running scenarios we haven't even imagined yet. There's a reason China Lake doesn't appear in political debates, a reason it's never scrutinized on television, a reason most Americans, even those who live just miles away, have no idea what it really is. Because China Lake isn't just a location, it's a blueprint for a new kind of empire, one that doesn't claim land or issue ultimatums. It shapes regions through infrastructure, influence, and embedded systems of control. It prototypes power, profitably and invisibly. That's what China Lake offers, a place to manipulate the terms of tomorrow's battlefield before the world realizes it's even been drawn. And the most disturbing part, the public funds it but doesn't own it. The technologies tested here, the autonomous strike systems, AI targeting, hypersonic delivery, and predictive surveillance are often patented by private firms, licensed to allied nations or outsourced to contractors who answer to shareholders, not citizens. This isn't national defense, it's national monetization, military supremacy built on a foundation of secrecy and privatized experimentation. And the implications stretch far beyond the desert, because if war is being automated and the tools of violence are being created by unaccountable corporations in classified zones, then who holds the ethics? Who holds the pause button? Who answers for what gets used and where? China Lake has no press office, no permanent civilian watchdog, no open hearings, just labs, drones, data feeds, and gates that don't open to questions. But make no mistake, what happens here doesn't stay here. It travels by satellite to war rooms. It gets loaded into contractor databases. It turns into decisions that ripple across continents, collapsing infrastructure, redrawing borders, and shaping human lives far from the test range. So when we talk about American military power, about global influence, or foreign policy, or deterrence, we're not just talking about what's on the surface, we're talking about what's rehearsed beneath it. In the silence of Mojave, war isn't coming. It's already begun, as simulation, as software, as investment strategy. And by the time the public sees the effects, the Empire will already have moved on to its next prototype. If you found this expose valuable, subscribe to Empire Secrets. We reveal how the world's most powerful systems are built, long before they reach the headlines. Thanks for watching, guys, and see you in the next video. Your desire, your empire.